Hey everybody, welcome back to On Stage, Off Stage. I'm your host, George Sapio, and this is episode number 149, January 2022. Happy New Year, y'all. Let's hope 22 brings us positive change, greater compassion for our fellow humans of all variations, and lots more theater. This month we are featuring Rachel Feeny-Williams, a playwright and founder of the Facebook group Literary and Discourse Society. Rachel is a very busy playwright, as you will find, recently published, and, like a few other wonderful folks, have taken the lead and filled the need for theater enthusiasts to stay in touch and exercise their creativity during this awful pandemic. The presence on Facebook, this is a new thing for a lot of people, so how did you fall into this?
Well, it was started by myself and another woman a director who I know, Katie Jones, who's based out in a small village in Broadcliffe in Devon, where I'm from. She and I both love theatre. She has actually directed my pieces before, and a few months into lockdown, we had a chat and decided that we needed to do something to kind of bring theatre back into our lives. So we got in contact with a few people we knew, started hosting meetings on Zoom, and then the Facebook group came, and before we knew where we were, we had over 100 members all over the world, and it's been running pretty much every Sunday for a year and a half now. And I say it started a lot with mostly work of mine, but then slowly we drew in more and more playwrights, obviously yourself being included. And the bigger it became, the less likely you started to see an end, really, because initially when it started, we thought, okay, well, this will kind of see us through the whole lockdown COVID thing, and then it'll be finished. But we're here 18 months later, and a lot of the restrictions have been lifted and people are still turning up week on week to chat and read, and it's just so great that it's continued with the following that it has, in my opinion.
Of course. You surprised that it's lasted this long?
Yeah, because obviously, as I say, it's a weekly commitment, and I know it's only sort of a few hours a week, but that's a hell of a lot to take out of people's lives. And some people obviously drip in and dip out every now and again, but there are people like obviously myself because I host them, but Barbara Guinan, who's based in New York City, she's been there pretty much every Sunday since its inception as a reader, and yeah, people love it. I've not had a single negative thing said about it.
Yeah, Barbara she's quite a good reader as well too.
Do you think she keeps saying she's not an actress, but she brings life to everything she reads.
She does.
I mean, they all do.
Yeah. No, it's fun. So, what does it take for you to get this thing going every week? Because it's basically just you running this thing. So,
yeah,
how much has that impacted your probably already busy life?
Initially, it was more problematic because we had less works available, and you become very much aware that it's your stuff week in, week out. So I do a push every so often to the playwrights who are within our Facebook group and that are still out there who haven't joined, do come to us and say, okay, I've got this one piece. And then we read it and hopefully they come back with more. And so we built up quite a catalogue of work so that when I plan the weeks ahead, it's always a variety. And yeah, other than that, it's just keeping people informed, which when you are used to a life of social media, it's 5 minutes on the computer maybe once a week, and then the Sunday session itself, and for what is essentially minimal effort from my part, I just feel like it's become such a huge thing.
It does seem like a huge thing because it does happen every week, and that's not easy to maintain, especially when you're planning and putting everything together. Thank God for social media, since this awful pandemic has hit. It's completely disrupted theater as we know it. This has been a theme that people have been talking about for the past year and a half, 18 months. Where are we going to, where are we going to perform? Where's my work going to be done? And who's going to act? And can we get together? And do we only have to write plays with masks in them? I mean, how many plays about bank robberies can you write? It's
But I think in a way it also became kind of an escape from the whole COVID lockdown thing, because for those sort of 2-3 hours a week, we don't really discuss it in as much detail as I imagine people do during their kind of regular lives. I mean, we
yeah.
occasionally, when there's obviously big pieces of news, that we have a bit of a discussion, but the sessions are dominated by writing, and that's what they're for.
Yeah, there's been quite an array of play types and subject matter, and we go from the linear, the basic, this is really easy to follow, to things that are much more metaphysical, much more abstract. And I think it's a wonderful thing about literary discourse that all of that stuff is welcomed.
Yeah.
And all of it is read, and everybody's got a chance to get their scribblings out into the world and to hear what they sound like, because that makes such a difference from just gazing at it on the page. Sometimes it's a complete difference.
You can hear it as a writer when lines don't make sense. They may look right on the page, but the second it's also, if someone's reading a line and they're falling over the words, you can tell that's not going to get any better, because those words they don't fit right together.
Yeah.
But if you were going to have an actor performing it, you'd get hit with the same issue of they keep falling over the words. So it kind of helps the editing process as well.
I think it's a wonderful step for every playwright to hear their work, because most of the time it's actually easier now, I think, with COVID and with social media and groups like this. For a lot of folks, there are more opportunities to get their work done, because normally you'd have to wait for everybody to get together and go to one place and get a space to do it, and bring bagels and lifesavers or whatever it happens to be. And now it's just, all right, here's the Zoom link. Here's your part. In this case, considering that most of theater has been completely disrupted and destroyed for the past 18 months, this is one of the side benefits that kind of outweighs the problem.
Yeah, because people keep saying how the world is getting smaller because of the internet and because of social media, but you, as a playwright living in Britain, I would never have imagined meeting playwrights from, as I say, Costa Rica, where you're from, New York, Seattle, Canada. We had a guy from Thailand at one point, and you never imagine meeting these people in normal circumstances. And that's one of the major silver linings to this whole pandemic thing, is that Zoom has become such a big part of our lives, and it has made the world so much smaller when it comes to sharing creativity and creative ideas.
Have you learned anything from any of these disparate folks from around the world that has stuck with you? I mean, because all of a sudden like you said, we're getting points of view that we normally wouldn't get.
For me, I always find it interesting when someone with an American accent reads one of my plays, because there are a lot of I had one of my plays performed virtually in New York a few weeks ago, and I had a Zoom call with them beforehand, and they said we may remove some of the Englishisms. And I'd never heard this word before in my life, but apparently that's the thing that Americans call English words in plays or TV shows that wouldn't fit an American accent. It's like Americans don't tend to use the phrase bloody. So bloody hell, bloody this, bloody that. Americans don't really tend to say that word.
Well, those of us who grew up watching Monty Python and a lot of English, UK, British, television programs, to us, it's pretty natural because we've heard it so much. But yeah, I mean, saying this bloody work job that I'm doing right now, it does sound a little.
It's very much an Englishism, as they call it.
Englishism. Wow. A different language.
Englishism. But yeah, so when I have American members reading my work, it's interesting because it's it sometimes gets a different emphasis on the sentence that I wouldn't have heard, because it's all been, until then, I've always heard it in my head in a British accent.
Yeah. Well, having it in your head is one thing. Seeing it, or hearing it from other people,
Yeah.
it's completely different. I love that because everything in my head is almost perfect. I'm such a good writer inside my own head, but once I hear other people work the play, I think, yeah, okay, that's got to go. That needs it. Yeah, I thought that line was so brilliant, and yet it keeps falling flat. So
But
it's a learning
at
experience.
the same time, you also discover things about characters that you wouldn't have thought of. So when we read Would You a few weeks ago, and you read Sebastian,
Right.
when I first wrote it, imagined all the characters with various kind of levels of British accent. And then when I came away, I thought, you know what, Sebastian would sound amazing with an American accent, because it was sounded perfect the way you did it.
Thank you. I really liked that part. I had read it before, but I had not read it out loud. And once I started reading it out loud, I started trying to put the character together. Who is this guy? What's his speech pattern? What's his vocal pattern? How does he fit in? And how do I make him? Because until you get to the end, you don't know if he's evil, if he's good, what kind of thing he's offering, because it never really comes through to the end. So you try and figure out what's the best way to do these lines that are true to the original personality that you came up with. And you and I never talked about this beforehand. So for me, it was kind of like a road to discovery thing.
But I think that's the other great thing, is that all the readers have a choice of whether the scripts we read are read cold or not. So I know we have a few who download them in advance and read them. Mm-hmm. Some literally download them on the night and read them as they are. And it's always interesting, I find, the comparisons between the two, because you find there is a lot more emotion and kind of the right amount of emphasis for those who've read the script before. But at the same time, you also discover more about the lines from someone who's reading them for the first time, because it goes back to, again, the whole thing of having, like, if they're falling over words or sentences don't quite fit, you'll never see that as much as someone who's reading those lines for the first time.
True. I almost always pre-read everything, and it's nice to know what's actually going to be read. So I get to have some kind of an idea about it. And once or twice I've been there and I did not have a chance to do it, and I had a cold read, and that was always an interesting thing, because I'm making the discovery line by line, and everybody else in the play is also making discoveries. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. You also direct, and I'm just wondering how one affects the other as a playwright. Having the director in your head, or being the director having the playwright in your head. How do you manage that? Do they work together? Do they support each other?
I've had a couple of different experiences regarding the direction of my pieces. Either I have literally handed the piece over to a director, either via email or face-to-face, and I have never seen the thing again until I've gone to see it on the night. And if they have any questions, I've said they can come to me, but normally it's a case of, this is your show, you run with it. The dangerous one I found is when I've directed plays that I've written, because you see the idea so clearly when you're writing it, and you just think that nothing can ever deviate from that. But of course, with kind of casting or space limitations or even budget limitations, you kind of have to shrink your ideas down, or at least be somewhat flexible with them. So it is a learning curve for me, as much as that I have to be able to kind of, as you say, turn off the writer voice in my head. If I'm ever directing something I've written, I will always have a number two who will say, no, you're being silly now. This is kind of hold me to the reins, almost, as it were, because writers do get very precious about our work when we are heavily involved.
I've noticed that.
And I think sometimes you do need someone to poke you with a bit of reality every now and then.
It's not always possible, depending upon the playwright. People are very protective about their work, and they want it done exactly the way it's in their head, and that's not always possible. I always think it's a way of discovery, and I personally hate directing my own work. I'd rather have somebody else do it because I want to see it through somebody
Oh
else's
yeah.
eyes. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because having to direct one's own work and then get the feedback, because what's in your head goes out to the actors, and then the actors give you back something different, and there you are thinking that was not what I thought of originally, but it might work. I always look for a way to make the play grow somehow. But
Yeah. And there's always a case where actors will turn to you and ask why a character says a certain thing,
mhm.
and they'll explain why it doesn't seem to make sense to them. And then you think about it and you go, well, actually, they're right. That doesn't make any sense at all. And then you maybe either change the line around or take it out altogether. And a lot of the time, the play would never be exactly the same going out on a stage as it was when it first went into the rehearsal room. And as you say, it's a growth process, which is even better for
Yeah.
the play, if nothing for nothing else.
So how long have you actually been engaged in this vocation of theater? What got you started?
I co-wrote, co-produced, and co-directed
Mm.
my first piece at university way back in 2008, which went very well. And then I kind of had a kind of sabbatical for about 4 years. Then in 2012, I kind of started it up again, and again directed one of my own pieces at a festival. And then again, it's been kind of a slower process before the pandemic. It was kind of every few months or so I'd come up with a new idea, and sometimes I'd write an entire script without deferring from it. Sometimes I'd write a few scenes, plan the entire play, but then never really get to the point. I get that hit the wall of writer's block and then go, no, this is going in the unfinished folder.
Mm.
But it wasn't really until lockdown hit that I really started in my stride, because to date I've completed 3 play a day challenges, one in February, one in April, and then one in September. As they sound, you write a play a day.
Yeah.
The one back in February was through an external organisation, and that was based on a brief that they set. And then the one back in April was based on a different animated GIF every day. And then the one in September was just based on a word. And even that, I set up a Facebook group for that, mainly so I'd have some sort of accountability almost to say, see, I have posted every day, I have done it. And then slowly but surely it gained more and more people. And yeah, well, some didn't write every day, some didn't write plays, some just posted things. It was just nice to have that sense of community, which is the same for literary and discourse. And I think that's one of the great things that you do have to keep going, even despite all the restrictions and chaos we are living in. While we may be a while before we get back to full normalcy, as far as at least amateur theatre is concerned, as long as you keep that sense of community going and keep it alive, then that's all you really need.
True. Playwright is by its nature one of the loneliest professions. And yeah, well, I mean, basically, you sit there and just wait for the brilliant words to come spilling out onto the page, and sometimes you're successful and a lot of times you're not. Theater in itself is, and I will defend this, a collaborative profession, collaborative vocation. Not at every stage, because I think playwriting is mostly done solitary. But to have people aware that you are attempting this. Okay, first of all, a play a day for what, 30 days? Each one of these things?
February was 28. April was 30. And I think September was the same, 30 days. So it's with 88 plays total over the 3.
Okay, because I'm kind of sitting here staggered by the amount of writing that you've done. 88 plays, and these are short plays. Of course, right?
Yes, they are. They are all short plays. A couple of them did end up being just monologues, but what's been great for me is bringing them to the Sunday group. A couple of them are in the process of expansion. So Memory, which we read, which was a police crime piece, started out as 16 pages. It then came to be read, and everyone said, no, we need more. We need more of this. So I then kind of went away, and it came back as a 40-page one act. So it's, yes, they have all started life as short plays, but I think there's definitely room for some of them to expand.
I'm just kind of staggered at the sheer volume of writing that you do. You obviously love to sit and write, and that's, you know.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It is an incredibly high stress challenge, because there is that pressure of having to have not necessarily a brilliant idea, but at least an idea every day. And you're sat there sometimes and it gets to sort of 8, 9 in the evening and you think, oh my God, where are you? You're out there. I know you are.
Do you put a lot of pressure on yourself to make each idea brilliant, or do you just run with whatever pushes itself to the front of your brain and starts waving its arms going, hello?
I tend to latch on to kind of the first idea that appears, simply because there is a reason that it was the first one. And then if I can turn that idea constructively into a play, then I will. Sometimes I have gotten half a page in and thought, no, this isn't going to work, and then gone back and started again with something different. I would never say that all of the pieces came out perfect. Some of them came out a lot better than others. There is a distinct moment as a writer when you know that one piece is always going to be preferred, at least by you, over others. Yeah. The first challenge I did, one of the briefs was a set of rules that you had to write the play for. So it's a set number of pages, a set number of words per line. Certain characters couldn't use certain letters, and there were about 8-10 rules that went like this. And that one, I started about 8 o'clock in the evening and I finished at 3 o'clock in the morning. And at one point, my partner came in at 1 and said, are you still doing this? And I just broke. I was like, yes, I will finish it when I'm finished. I generally don't know how he puts up with me, because people say being a performer is stressful, but being the partner of anyone involved in that sector is just the most stressful thing imaginable. Because I always think that if I was ever to get to such a professional level, I'd probably be that stressed all the time.
Creative process has never been an easy one. And yeah, you're right, because the the spouses or partners of those who labor in, in the arts, that's a certain kind of purgatory. Not everybody can do that. Because half the time you're away someplace, you're not there. You are in that labyrinth in your head where you are trying to find your way from one end to the other, hoping it makes sense, hoping that it's good, hoping that the words are the right words. And most artists spend so much time there. And a lot of the conversation between them and their partners is, what? I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear you. What?
But at the same time, they're also one of the few people who genuinely understand you, because you don't go through someone writing 87 plays without understanding at least a little bit of what the process is like. And over time, he has gotten more involved. Like, if I'm struggling for an idea, he will ask me what the inspiration is supposed to be, and he'll make suggestions. And I know he's kind of just trying to take the pressure off, but it's quite nice to have someone there who, even if just to bounce ideas off, even if they sound completely ridiculous.
I can only imagine. Yeah, it's different, I think, for a lot of folks. I'm pretty much the exact opposite. Nobody sees anything until I'm done with the 5th draft. I never even let anyone know what it is I'm writing about. Because I think if I let the words out of my mouth, they'll fly out of my head and I won't have all that stuff inside my head to keep mixing into this ridiculous, I know it's going to suck, but I can't stop writing it anyway kind of thing, you know? It's.
But sometimes as a writer, you also need that external perspective as well as to whether something does sound ridiculous or not. Especially with humor as well, I find.
Yeah, that's the
great. I say that's the great thing about literary discourse is they will tell that you can tell if it's funny.
Yeah, does it work the way it worked when I imagined it? And oh my God, it is funny. Yes, yay, terrific! I'm a real playwright. Yeah. How has your writing changed over this past year? I mean, after doing all of these plays, because your determination and your commitment is staggering. Okay? I mean, seriously, to just sit down and do all of these plays, how has that changed you as a writer?
I think when the first piece that I ever wrote was incredibly dark. And then I had the gap for 4 years, and then I wrote mostly kind of humorous farcical style pieces because that's what I thought amateur theatre groups would do, which, to be fair, is not really a stretch of the imagination.
Right.
And then once I started the playwriting challenges, I thought, I have no idea if anyone's ever going to see these. I'm just going to write what I want to write, and I'm not pandering to anyone else. And that's why through the 87 pieces, they range right the way from, they go from monologues through humor, through tragedy. There are a couple of, I don't really like to call them political pieces, but they are heavily influenced by the recent events of, stuff like the Me Too movement and the incidences with regards to casting couches and that kind of thing. I've got a couple of pieces that were influenced by that because it made me angry and it made me want to write about it. And I think when you realize you're writing shorter pieces that potentially may never see the light of day, you realize you can just write for you, which is one of the massive reliefs of not having to do it professionally, which I think is probably one of the. I think Roald Dahl said it best when he talked about becoming a professional writer and having to sit down for 2-3 hours a day at his typewriter and having to write. I think that is the worst thing in the world, because as much as during the challenges I knew I had to write something, it didn't matter if what I wrote was very controversial, very sad, or ridiculously stupid. It was only ever, in theory, going to be me that would see it. I think that's something that all writers should be able to do, is write for themselves. Because as much as, producing plays in big theatres and on Broadway is lovely, you are to a certain degree pandering to someone else's opinions, and normally that someone else is the someone with the money.
True. Yeah, it's the writing for spec, or the writing specifically for what pleases most audiences.
Yeah,
is kind of doing it backwards. But you were talking about controversy and politics, and it's hard for anybody to go through the world these days without being affected by everything else that is happening. It's somewhere in the world, it's going to impact your life.
Yeah.
And I've noticed and everybody else has noticed, a lot of theaters these days are now looking for plays that speak to a certain audience, written by a certain audience, about certain subjects, because theater is becoming more wide-reaching, more egalitarian. There's a concerted effort to include people whose voices have not been heard, and a large part of that is voices of women who have been neglected, sadly, criminally neglected for so many years. While it's great to write the things that you want to make people laugh, there's also a huge market for plays about women's issues, about racial issues, about any kind of provocative, sensitive, political, racial, religious subject you can imagine.
The concern you kind of can get to there is that obviously you have the supportive general public who want to go and see the piece because it's an interesting subject or it's a revolutionary style of theatre, but you will get people who will say it's being written for an agenda. It's being written because this particular political group wants this to be seen, and that's the only reason it's seen the light of day, which I think is really unfair on the writer themselves, because if someone has poured their heart and soul into a piece and then it's just dismissed as being a political agenda, it makes you doubt your ability as a writer, which makes it even worse. So as much as opening the doors to unheard voices and unseen topics is brilliant and revolutionary, it will work and it will be brilliant to a certain degree, but you will always get the doubters and the haters and those who say it's all political, which is immensely frustrating. I heard a podcast interview with a young Black actress who was to play Hamlet in London, and she was playing him as a him, and she got a lot of kickback from people saying, why as her gender was she playing Hamlet, why as her colour was she playing Hamlet. And it's just a case of, when did it get to the point where we were questioning entertainment so much for its agenda? Like, as ridiculous as it sounds, you don't go to the West End and see Mary Poppins and question its political agenda.
Yeah, true, but one would argue that Mary Poppins is maybe not as controversial in its political content, and there are people who will argue that all art is political, because art is about life, and art is about the things that vex us, the things that trouble us, the things that give us joy, the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
But that's the thing of it is art is also all about perspective, and the sense that if a play is coming out on a subject that you don't particularly approve of, or has characters in it that you don't particularly like, then my philosophy is don't go and see it. If you're not gonna, if you don't like it, don't go and see it. But then don't get up on your soapbox and say, oh, it's all political, they're just trying to push this agenda, because you don't know that. None of us are in those rooms when that decision gets made.
Before I let you go, I want to talk about an astounding thing, and that is you just got published. You've got your first, is this your first book of plays?
Yes, I self-published a collection of 10 comedy plays that I've written, all of which were written over the last year. So they're all part of the Play a Day challenges. And yeah, I started with comedy pieces just because making people laugh is always a great thing about theatre, and I think it gets more attention than something slightly more serious. I may publish more depending on how this goes, but yeah, as of now, I am an author technically.
How did it feel to hold the book for the first time?
It was amazing. I stay at work from home that day to make sure I was there for delivery, and I took them into my partner when he finished work, and it was just phenomenal. And you never expect to see your name in print unless it's something that you've just printed out on a computer, but to have it kind of bound and there, and yeah,
kind of makes it official, doesn't it? Yeah, all of a sudden,
yeah,
when you say I'm a playwright, it's I'm a playwright. But once you see your name on, let's say, either a poster or a book, and all of a sudden, playwright has a capital P.
Yeah.
Where it didn't before. How's the reception been for this?
It's been good. I didn't have many printed because I know that I am still on the large scale. I am still unknown, but I mean the support I've had from friends, family, fellow playwrights has just been phenomenal. I actually posted today. Half of the printed copies have already sold, and they've gone across 5 countries / states.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
which is just incredible.
That's
just so surreal. And the thing is, it wasn't even my idea. My partner asked me what the process was, and I started looking into it. And yeah, he just kept pushing, saying, you should do this, you should do this. And it's like, but what if no one buys it? What if just you and my mum buy it and that's it? And he was like, well, then we'll have a box of, 28 books.
Christmas presents, birthday presents.
Yeah, that's what everyone's getting for Christmas now. But no, I mean, say otherwise, it's been really great, and it's just so nice to have something tangible, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, my computers all die tomorrow, then at least I have something tangible to prove that I wrote plays once.
Well, I think there's always going to be more than that. But yeah, it's really nice. It's just, I think what the word you use, tangible, is the thing. It's a book with a capital B, just like Playwright with a capital B. And it's official because success in this business it's a little difficult. So, Rachel Feeny-Williams, this has been a joy. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about your work and playwriting in general, which is something I could talk about forever. But it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey kids, thanks for listening to Onstage Offstage. Onstage Offstage is produced monthly, and all of our shows can be found at onstageoffstage.org and also on iTunes and Spotify. If you enjoy what we do, please recommend us to your friends. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at OnOffStage. And if you are a theater artist with an upcoming project of interest or know of someone in the theater who'd make some seriously good chat, by all means, send us a note at info@onstageoffstage.org. I'm George Sapio. Thank you once again for listening. And please, stay safe, be careful, not only for yourself, but for those with whom we all share this rock. And as always, happy theatering to all of you.